Guys, welcome back to another episode of Becoming Secure. This is your host, Emily, dating and relationship coach, specializing in all things attachment. You know how it goes, unless this is your first episode listening. And if it is, then welcome. So glad that you're here. So I wanted to share a quick insight today with you guys about a conversation that I literally just had with a client. Now, this client, like so many of you who are watching, listening, and so many of my other clients and myself as well in the past, I would often take a lot of responsibility for other people's feelings. Kind of caretake, if you're like me and many of my clients, maybe you grew up in an environment where people were kind of emotionally reactive. You often had to tiptoe around other people's emotions to kind of caretake. And so you really grew up operating in this kind of dynamic where I have to make sure that you're okay in order for me to feel okay, which is codependency. And so this can make it really difficult to set boundaries when you are then an adult. And a bit of the context of this conversation with this client is she is a few months out of a relationship and it definitely needed to end. It was a really, really good growing experience for her. And she's seeing that her ex is a boundary pusher in so many ways. It's like where she closes the door, he finds a window. And so we talked about not feeling guilty now for her continuing to move on with her life. And even, she's a few months out, even potentially going on a date here and there. And she talked about feeling this guilt for, getting over the relationship sooner. And one thing we talked about is how he's not setting the necessary boundaries to allow his heart to heal. Like he's following her on from all these random social media accounts and still trying to be in contact with her, even though she has said she doesn't want that, just kind of stopping by. Again, where a door closes, he finds a window. And so we talked about how that is really not her burden to carry. If he were really trying to move forward and do what he needed to emotionally heal, he would be in a much different place now than where he is currently, where he's really not accepting that either the relationship is over or he's just not accepting that their relationship of any kind is done. Maybe he's realized, okay, we're not dating each other, but I still want to have you in my life in these ways, or I still want to be able to check in on you or keep tabs, all those things. And so that is not her emotional responsibility to take care of his feelings, to make sure that he is okay. He needs to feel the consequences of his own actions. And so bit of the context for kind of this conversation coming up. So she's been learning how other people's feelings are not her responsibility. Okay, that's something, a big thing that if you grew up in this kind of dynamic, you sort of have to learn, you have to reckon with, and something I help clients with a lot, which has also been part of my journey. That being said, the reason I wanted to have this episode today is because I saw this client start to do what so many people do, where she did the pendulum swing. She had this tendency, and I caught it. I said, hold up, I see something happening here, where she's doing the opposite, which is also not healthy. Super normal though, where we are doing one tendency, then we overcorrect. We go to the other end and we actually need to find that integrated middle. So what this looked like for her is people maybe doing things that she's not super comfortable with, or in two examples she gave were her needing to reject a guy. And what was happening is she had realized she's not actually interested in either of these people. So rather than expressing that, what was happening is with one of them, she felt like he should be able to read the cues she has been giving, where she's kind of been blowing him off. She's kind of been never giving him an actual time that they could go to coffee or this or that. And so all of a sudden she went from taking a lot of responsibility for other people's feelings and really caretaking them to, oh, I'm not responsible for other people's feelings. Oh, now I don't even need to express what my boundary is, and I am just kind of absolved of any responsibility in the situation. And so this is an overcorrection. Most of the time, you actually do need to lean in and express the boundary. And this is where so many people kind of go wrong, where it feels like I have this freedom now that I'm not taking care of everybody else's feelings. But then we don't take enough responsibility over how the impact that our actions do have. And especially with some of these avoidant tendencies, you may tend to do exactly that, where you don't express, you don't state the boundary. And it's kind of like, well, he should just be able to pick up, or she should just know, she should just be able to interpret what I'm doing. When really secure is where we communicate directly in most situations. There may be some nuance to this, but if you are continuing to see someone, trying to ask you out, someone trying to do something that you're not comfortable with and you haven't explicitly stated it, that is an opportunity for you to explicitly state it. And with one of these gentlemen in particular who has kind of been trying to um, developed some sort of connection, we don't fully know, with her for quite a while. He doesn't seem like he really understands social cues very well. And so you also have to take those things into consideration sometimes. You can't necessarily expect that other people are coming from the same perspective as you are. Okay. And if you listened to the episode with Chelsea recently, this was a big revelation for her that, okay, if you have maybe a fearful avoidant attachment style, you grew up hyper attuned to other people's feelings, needs, their actions. You are reading the room constantly because that's how you were able to somewhat create a sense of safety. Hypervigilance is our survival strategy. For dismissive avoidance, they grew up in a completely different dynamic. Their survival strategy is usually not hypervigilance. And they grew up with a lot of people kind of being indirect and not super emotionally attuned. And they are not going to always pick up on subtle things that would require reading between the lines. And so this is not to say like it's an excuse for people who are being, what's the word, like intentionally, oh my goodness, was it weaponized incompetence? It's not that, but it's taking into consideration that everyone comes from a different background or a different upbringing from you. And so sometimes we do need to spell it out. Sometimes we do need to directly communicate and just don't assume that other people have the same frame of reference as you do. So when you are becoming more secure, you're not doing all of this kind of like wishy-washy reading into things or making other people read into things. You're just going to state what needs to be stated. And I remember that this was something I had to really work on for myself too. One thing that I actually just told this client is if you think about a scenario, if you run into that person again and you feel awkward versus like them feeling awkward, that can kind of clue you into whether you needed to say something or not. I know that's so vague. Let me give an example. So for one of these guys, okay, let's say someone gets her number and then she is realizing she's not feeling it. Maybe she learns some more things about him, realizes they're not a good match. And then she just ghosts and doesn't actually communicate with him. If she saw him in public again, would she feel, would it be on her to feel kind of weird about that interaction? Odds are yes, because there was a lack of communication that was really related to her lack of emotional maturity and lack of boundaries there. Versus the alternative, if you just communicate to that person, I don't think we're a good fit, but I wish you all the best. If she runs into him in public again, it may feel a little awkward, but not because of anything she's done. She's communicated directly. So that's one way that you can kind of check yourself too. You know, we don't need to just pull away and not communicate what needs to be said. Really work on finding the strength, the courage, and sometimes it's learning the practical skills of how to actually communicate directly. And that can make setting boundaries feel so much easier. And learning about how to set boundaries. This is something that we cover in both of my one-on-one programs. So there's Secure in Love, which is for those of you who are in relationships and you feel yourself kind of sabotaging it because of your anxious or avoidant tendencies, or an Attachment Alchemy, which is my one-on-one for singles, where you are just wanting to heal your attachment to become more secure and to learn how to attract men who are also healthier and more secure. So both of those one-on-one programs, we cover boundaries in depth because it makes such a difference. And when you are learning to operate in this more secure way, as I just kind of described, it leaves you feeling really safe with yourself. It leaves you feeling not icky. And also, it helps you determine if someone else is healthy or not. Okay, so like the ghosting or pulling away, or if people tend to be boundary pushers. If you're watching the video, you might have just seen whiskers from my friend's cat who's sitting right behind my laptop. Anyway, you're going to be able to determine whether someone's healthy and whether they're more secure based on how securely you show up. Okay, so to give an example of that, I have a lot of clients who, again, they struggle on the boundaries and initially before we start working together. And many of them have dated a lot of boundary pushers, and they don't quite realize the degree of how much those guys are boundary pushers because they're not setting boundaries the whole time. And then they get so emotionally invested with that person that it feels really scary. And you're kind of almost a little stuck in that relationship before you even realize, whoa, this is not a safe person. And he knows where I live, or he knows where I work, or he has my number, or I'm alone with him in a private space. And so learning to operate securely to really set your boundaries is something that is going to help you determine if someone is healthy, especially early on, and really protect yourself and trust yourself in dating and relationships. So, a lot of being able to trust in other people again really comes down to being able to trust yourself to vet for red flags and to protect yourself. Really look out for yourself. So, all right, this is what I have for you guys today. Just wanted to share that. Watch out for this overcorrection where you're like, oh, I'm not responsible for their feelings, so I don't even have to communicate anything now. Watch out for that. That's not secure behavior. We want to work towards more of that direct communication. Obviously, there's some nuance in this, which is where working, one-on-one with me or going through a program of mine can help you navigate what does the nuance actually look like for your specific situation. So, all right, I hope you guys have a wonderful rest of your day. Wishing you lots of luck and love on your journey towards becoming more secure. Bye.